You either start covering my expenses without questions, or we're done. She said it flat, like it was a reasonable update to our arrangement, not an ultimatum. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open to our shared budget, her phone face down like it always was when she didn't want to explain something. We'd been living together for 3 years, splitting everything. Rent, groceries, utilities, no drama, no yelling. We both worked. We both paid. That was the deal we'd built. Her tone wasn't emotional, it was managerial. I asked what expenses she meant. She said life stuff and waved her hand, already annoyed that I was asking. Nails, clothes, rides, subscriptions. She said it added up and that since I made more, it made sense. That was the first line crossed. Not the money, the expectation. When I pulled up the numbers, she rolled her eyes and said budgets were my thing, not hers. That was new. We'd tracked spending together for years. I asked again, calmly, what changed. She sighed, grabbed her phone, and told me I was stressing her out over small things. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said I was acting like a roommate instead of a partner. That's when I noticed the bank alerts on my screen didn't match what she was saying. Our joint account was lower than it should have been. Not by a little, by thousands. I pointed to it and asked why. She said she'd moved some things around. I asked what things. She hesitated. Then she said it wasn't my business anymore because it was her card. It was our account. That was the second line crossed, and it wasn't subtle. Hidden spending, brushed off like I was out of bounds for noticing. I asked to see the statements. She laughed, actually laughed. She said I was being controlling and that she didn't have to justify herself. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just asked how long it had been going on. She said a few months, then corrected herself and said maybe longer, but that it didn't matter because she always planned to figure it out. I asked what figure it out meant. She didn't answer that. She went back to the ultimatum. Either I stepped up financially without conditions, or she'd start reconsidering the relationship. There was no apology, no acknowledgement that she'd hidden anything, just pressure. I asked if there was debt. She paused too long. She finally said yes, but said it like it was my fault for reacting. Credit cards, a personal loan I'd never heard about. She said it was temporary and that partners help each other without interrogations. I asked why she never told me. She said she didn't want to deal with my logic brain. That line landed harder than anything else. Not because it was insulting, but because it explained everything. Transparency was inconvenient, so she removed it. I told her this wasn't about generosity, it was about consent. Shared finances only work if both people know what's happening. She said I was being dramatic and making money bigger than love. Then she slid her phone across the table and said, "So what's it going to be?" I looked at the screen. It was a note she'd typed up, a list of monthly amounts she expected me to cover. No discussion section, no timeline, just totals. It wasn't a request. It was a demand wrapped in relationship language. I asked one last question. I asked if she planned to keep spending the same way. She said she deserved stability and that I should be able to provide it if I cared. That's when I stopped arguing. Not because I lost, because I understood. This wasn't a rough patch. It was a structural change she'd already decided on. She wanted the benefits of shared finances without shared accountability. She wanted control without transparency. I closed the laptop. She thought that meant I was giving in. She smiled and said she knew I'd come around. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. I just told her I needed some air and went for a walk. While I was gone, I checked the account on my phone, traced the withdrawals, the cash advances, the payments to cards I'd never seen. The pattern was clear. This wasn't temporary. This was ongoing, deliberate, and hidden. By the time I got back, she was watching TV like nothing happened. She asked if we were good. I said I needed time to think. She shrugged and said not to take too long because she didn't want to live in uncertainty. I nodded and went to bed. I didn't sleep much, not because I was angry, because once you see the shape of a problem clearly, your brain stops pretending it might fix itself. By morning, I wasn't confused anymore. I was just done pretending this was negotiable. Update 1. The next morning, she acted like the conversation was over. She made coffee, scrolled her phone, and talked about her day like nothing had shifted. No tension, No follow-up, just assumption. That alone told me how often this tactic had worked before. I asked if we could talk later that evening. She sighed and said fine, but warned me not to drag it out. When I got home from work, the kitchen table was set again, this time with her laptop open, not mine. She'd already reframed the discussion as a presentation. She told me she'd thought about it and decided she was willing to compromise. Her compromise was spreading her debt payments across my income so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. She said this like she was being generous. I asked if she planned to stop using the credit cards. She said that wasn't realistic and that I was focusing on details instead of solutions. I asked if she would at least share full access to the accounts so we could track things together again. She leaned back and said that level of oversight made her uncomfortable. That was the moment it clicked. She wanted support, not partnership. Coverage, not collaboration. I told her I wasn't agreeing to any financial responsibility I didn't have visibility into. She immediately flipped the tone. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me. She said couples help each other through hard times. She said if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't hesitate. I didn't argue with hypotheticals. I just asked why she hadn't told me earlier if trust mattered so much. She snapped that she knew how I'd react and didn't want the stress. Then she doubled down. She said if I didn't step up, she'd have to rethink our future because she couldn't be with someone who made her feel unsafe. There it was again. Pressure framed as vulnerability. Ultimatum dressed up as emotion. I told her calmly that financial safety doesn't come from hiding problems and assigning responsibility afterward. She laughed and said I sounded like a spreadsheet, not a boyfriend. I told her I wasn't taking on hidden debt. I wasn't funding spending I didn't agree to. And I wasn't staying in a setup where expectations only ran one direction. She stared at me for a few seconds, then said something that ended it. She said, "So you're choosing money over us?" I said no. I was choosing clarity over manipulation. That word made her stand up. She accused me of gaslighting her, said I was twisting things, said she couldn't believe how cold I was being. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her this wasn't a negotiation anymore. I said I'd be separating my finances immediately. She froze. Not angry, alarmed. She asked what that meant. I said it meant I'd transfer my portion of the rent and utilities for the month, and after that I'd only be responsible for my half, paid directly. She said we had shared finances. I reminded her that she'd already treated them as optional. She accused me of trying to control her by cutting her off. I didn't argue the label. I just logged into the account and moved my remaining funds into my personal one while she watched. She told me I was humiliating her. I said I wasn't doing anything secretly. That was the difference. She started crying then, not quietly, loud enough to make the neighbors noticeable. She said she felt betrayed. She said I was punishing her for being honest. I reminded her honesty would have been months ago. She said she didn't know how she'd pay her cards now. I asked why she'd assumed I would. She didn't answer that. By the end of the night, the decision was made. Not dramatic, just final. I packed a bag and told her I'd stay with a friend for a bit. Not as a threat, as space. She asked if this meant we were breaking up. I told her it meant I was stepping out of a situation that no longer involved mutual consent. She said I was overreacting and that I'd regret this once I calmed down. I told her I was calm now. When I left, she sent 3 messages in a row. One angry, one apologetic, one asking if I could at least cover her minimum payment that month. I didn't respond. The first real consequence hit 2 weeks later. She missed a payment. I only knew because the bank emailed me, assuming it was a mistake. Final update. After the missed payment, things unraveled without me touching anything. Her credit card company froze the account first, then another one followed. She tried to move money around, but there wasn't enough coming in to keep juggling it the way she had before. She texted me asking if I'd accidentally changed something with the bank. I didn't reply. There was nothing to clarify. A week later, the landlord emailed both of us about a delayed utility payment tied to her card. I forwarded my confirmation showing my half had already been paid directly. That ended the conversation on my side. She didn't like that. She showed up at my friend's place unannounced. Not angry, panicked. She said things were spiraling and that she didn't realize how tight everything really was. She said she just needed help getting back on her feet. I told her I wasn't involved anymore. She asked if I could at least co-sign a consolidation loan. Said it wouldn't cost me anything unless something went wrong. I told her that something had already gone wrong, and it wasn't financial. After that, she stopped asking and started blaming. Mutual friends started hearing that I'd abandoned her over money, that I'd left when she was vulnerable. I didn't correct anyone. The people who mattered already knew how we'd handled finances. The rest weren't my responsibility. A month later, she had to sell her car. Not because I forced her to, because the numbers finally caught up without someone quietly absorbing the impact. She moved into a smaller place across town. Cheaper rent, no shared account, no safety net she didn't build herself. I heard all of this secondhand. I blocked her number after she sent one last message asking if I ever really loved her. There was no accusation in it, just confusion. I didn't answer that either. The truth was simple. I loved the version of us that worked on consent and transparency. That version didn't exist anymore. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No explosion. No apology tour. Just distance. My credit stayed clean. My finances stabilized. My stress dropped fast once I wasn't bracing for the next surprise. A few months later, the bank removed my name from the joint account completely. The clerk didn't ask questions. It wasn't uncommon. That was the final administrative tie. Sometimes I think about how shocked she looked when I moved my money in front of her. Not because I did it, but because I did it calmly. No anger, no threats, just action. She thought the leverage was emotional. It turned out to be structural. I didn't win anything. I just stopped losing quietly. We don't speak. We don't follow each other. Our lives don't overlap. And that's how it ended. Not with revenge, just with consequences she'd already set in motion, finally arriving without me standing in the way.